Yes, I know you have a lot of questions, Freshman Michael. First of all, who am I? So, it is Senior Michael, your more handsome, more intelligent counterpart. And yes, I know you think right now you're on top of the world and nothing's better than you, but you're wrong. So now, it's my turn to ask you a couple of questions. Why, hello there, Senior Michael. This is Senior Michael speaking to you. As you might have remembered, 4 years ago I asked you a series of questions, and you answered them kind of shallowishly, not really that informatively, and I was just wondering if maybe in these past 4 years you've grown, maybe shown some depth. So, just like last time, the first question I have for you, why literature? Yes, I remember. The question was weird and vague back then, and it kind of is now. But as for the reason why I took AP Literature, mainly because my best friend Jing was taking it. It was senior year and I wanted to have as many classes with him as possible, so I took it then. On a deeper level though, the reason I took literature is that it's nice to be able to excel and to be with the strongest. You don't learn from being the best, you learn from the best. And being in this class, I'm not only placed with stronger peers, but people who push me. And with that work that pushes me, some of this reading was uncomfortable. I've never read a book I feel as complex as Madame Bovary. It just has so much depth. You never know who the good guy or the bad guy is, and you don't know who to feel bad for. And that's something I've never experienced before. And so it's nice to be challenged in a course like this. Okay, yes, exactly. That's kind of what I was hoping for. But now, tell me, what have you learned? I've learned a lot about writing from reading. I've learned about grammar, parallel structure, rhetorical devices, all these things that really open an arsenal for my own writing, something I'd never had before, and that was really nice. I feel like I've learned a lot of history from specific novels, and I've learned how to read and how to interpret, how to digest past what you initially hear. It's not just, okay, this is the right way of thinking, and that's something I really enjoy about literature. It's open, it's kind of like the initial question, it's purposely vague at times so that you have room to expand and room to interpret. And there's never a right answer. As Miss Swanson often does in class, there's always like a devil's advocate. So I can think here I am understanding 100% what the novel says, but no, I'm completely wrong. Or there's a totally different idea. I'm not necessarily wrong. And so I've just learned that there's more than one right way to approach a book, and that it's best to learn from your peers. Okay, yeah, that's a little bit vague. So, what exactly have you taken? Do you have a favorite book? Come on, are you really gonna ask that question? It hasn't changed, it's still The Odyssey. But I'm not quite surprised, it was a great novel. But looking back at the works that you've read this year, which one would you choose to be a favorite? And how has it really impacted you as a reader? What have you drawn from it? Besides The Odyssey, I would have to say one of my favorite books this year was definitely Man's Fate, and I also really enjoyed Black Boy. I enjoyed Man's Fate, one, because as I know, I've lived in China before, and it was nice to kind of see the communist insurrection, but a failed attempt, and it's weird to almost feel good for the communists, especially now. I feel like, or I guess since the Cold War really, and not so much in our generation, but you've always had the feeling that, like, communism is bad and it's inherently awful. And in China, I was kind of exposed to both, yes, that's true, and no, not necessarily. But reading that book, it was kind of weird, because as I learned from one of my peers, that it's like, you feel bad for the terrorists. And what exactly makes a terrorist? Who are terrorists? And that was something I never really experienced before. And then I really enjoyed Black Boy as well, just because, as we mentioned in class, Richard Wright isn't just writing about himself, he's writing for his whole generation. And I really think that speaks to what literature can do. It gives a voice to the voiceless, and it gives an uncommon or unheard opinion, and even if it isn't great now, it will be one day. And it provides an aspect of people's lives that you can't really get through history. Like, yes, we know about Jim Crow laws, and yes, we know they were awful, but we never really can tell, especially in our generation, how hindered African Americans were. And it was really nice to see or understand that. Now tell me, how have you come to appreciate literature? Well, I've touched upon this a little bit, but is that I understand now that literature isn't one piece of work written about one person. It's written by many people about many things. Like, I've touched upon Black Boy and Man's Fate, and how they give a voice to what was an uncommon, very often, or at least for me, an unheard opinion. But then there's also books, there's like Kafka. And books like this I really enjoy, where, first of all, it's an absurd novel, which is cool, because it's not so dry. But also, like, you hear the voice and the suffering that Kafka went through, and you can hear it in an allegorical and non-traditional form. And that's part of the reason I read, and that's what I appreciate, that authors are able to articulate themselves in such a such a abstract way, I want to say, but yet it still means so much. I would say, like, a paradigm shift I had for myself last year was like, yes, it's nice to have quotes, but you have to explain them. And you have to have strong verbs. These were two things we've seen throughout all the novels we've read this past year. Maybe not so much the Iliad, but it's a great novel nonetheless. And these are things that I feel like I've really been able to incorporate into my own writing. And out of all the reading, I'll always remember the stories, but this is what I take the most out of. And building upon that, now that I know that reading has so much more, I read it with different purposes. I read it multiple times. I read over passages slowly. I analyze it more. I don't just glance over it once and be like, that's kind of interesting. I read it and see, what can I take from it? What did the author mean? What position was he in when he was thinking of it? All these things have led me ultimately to just read with a more critical eye, and read for the purpose to learn, to improve your own writing, and to understand what the author's intentions were. Thank you so much for just sparking this, not intuition, that sounds strange, but thank you for sparking this somewhat of an epiphany and recollection of how far I've come. I would like to thank my teacher, thank my classmates who have pushed me, who have provided better ideas than my own. As I mentioned, you don't learn from being the best, you learn from the best. And I hope you all the best in your future careers. Thank you.